We're here at Create this week and recording some very special podcasts for Nation's Restaurant News. We're going to be interviewing 8 different executives from restaurants and also from the investor community to explore different themes from each of the chapters of the path to digital maturity.
Right, live at Create. Here we are with Geoff Alexander. Geoff from WowBao. Geoff is one of the few people who made both delivering the digital restaurant books, 1 and 2. I mean, that is how digital WowBao is.
I'm trying really hard to make number 3. Fingers are crossed.
Do you know there are already bribes coming in from people to say, listen, we've had enough of Alexander, but we haven't, Geoff, which is why you're on today.
That's
so thanks
exactly
for being
right. That's exactly right.
I'd rather be in the book.
Well, we are very excited to talk about WowBao, and specifically, I think, as I think about the brand, its heritage coming from the Let Us Continue group, being a brick and mortar, and then moving into the virtual world, and then now beyond the virtual world into the CPG world. There's just so much that's happened with WowBao, and we're excited to talk with you about it today, particularly as it relates to the world of ghost kitchens and virtual brands. So,
okay.
Here we go.
Now, before we get to our standard set of questions here, Geoff, we've got to ask you, ghost kitchens, virtual brands, they've been a little bit in the news this year, and I've heard how you've responded to some of this in recent conferences, but would like to get your sentiments out on the podcast as well. Are ghost kitchens dead? Do virtual brands still make sense in this post-COVID world?
Okay, so it's very important that we understand when I talk about the virtual space, I'm very passionate about it for a number of reasons. And I think that in the last few months with the news that's been coming out, my passion is being mistaken for anger. What I believe, yes, to go to your question, the answer is virtual restaurants are going nowhere. Delivery is going to continue. Delivery is extremely important for the industry and for restaurants to survive. And the virtual restaurant space has so much evolution in front of it, and continued innovation is going to be coming that I'm extremely, extremely excited and happy and bullish on how it's going to become. I've said this a few times, and I still believe it, that we are really like the second inning of virtual restaurants. I hope we go into extra innings, and it goes on for a long time. And the reason why I say that is what's going on in the press has taken a one-sided story, I believe, just like press does. Somehow it's been forgotten about the fact that virtual restaurants during the pandemic helped pay people's rent, keep restaurants open, keep people employed, did a lot of good. It also created an incubation system for new chefs to create new concepts. And all of that has somehow been forgotten. And I think that if we can get back to why people are doing this, it can get embraced, and you'll see so much more come our way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. There's so many good things about them. Now, they do have some tricky things too, and I think of all of the virtual brands we've seen, WowBao has navigated around those things the best, right? And so I think in particular, the news has been very focused on consistency of execution in restaurant, and it feels like WowBao was designed from the get-go to deal with that consistency and make sure that execution was the same no matter who was doing it or where it was happening.
Right. Well, look, what's important about the virtual space, and with even opening your own restaurant, number 2, is consistency and training. The thing that we have to remember is that literally from March of 2020 to, let's call it, January of 2023, right? So 30 months, maybe, some brands went from 0 to 2,000. We went from 0 to 700. I mean, that is absurd growth. If you go pre-pandemic and said to any restaurant chain outside of maybe Yum Brands, McDonald's, and Starbucks, that you're going to grow in 30 months from 0 to 700, what's your worries? Probably CEOs would have been like, we're not going to do it, and put the foot down and said, I refuse to do it. When you have that kind of growth, and the reason why that growth happened was twofold. One, ease of execution, right? There wasn't human capital, there wasn't leases, there wasn't equipment, right? It was all virtually done. And the need is what sped it up. Of course there's going to be issues. We're absurd to think there's not going to be problems. If you open up number 2 restaurant you're going to have issues. Everyone says the hardest thing in the world is going from 1 to 2. What's important is to find good partners to represent your brand and to recognize they're not doing something right and to be willing to correct the mistakes on the front line. What happens a lot in every group, in every industry, in every business is the person at the top of the food chain wants something to happen. For instance, if sanitation is the most important thing, that you want a clean restaurant, I guarantee you all of your restaurants are clean. If sanitation's like number 7 on your to-do list, your restaurants are probably dirty because number 7 for that CEO is probably number like 14 to 18 for the manager who's working. So those partners that people signed up from a virtual space who cared about making sure the virtual restaurant was successful did it right. Now for WowBao, to go back to your question, is yes, our product, we have co-packers who help us do it. We're able to have national distribution of it. And from day one, we said to people, all you have to do is boil water and have steam. And you really can't mess up our product.
So you're saying I can do it?
I'm saying that I burn water and I can do it. You literally cannot do it, but you could do it in your dorm room at college. You could do it out of your garage, out of your own house. I mean, it's that, boil water and you have product. Some of these other concepts are a little more difficult, or they're not even difficult. It's just about caring.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me how you can have a restaurant that has 30 menu items. And we all know there's one menu item that no one ever buys. But when they finally make it, either they make it with care and it's right, or it's always getting complaints, right? It's always one of the two. If you have a virtual brand, it might be the type of thing where you're only making 3 of those a night or 6 of those a night. So what is the consistency factor there? And that's why so many other brands have had problems. And we've been very fortunate because of our product.
Today you're in host kitchens, you're in ghost kitchens. Congrats on the Walmart CPG deal. I mean, WowBao is everywhere. But the root and branches of this brand started in brick and mortar. Why was that important, and has it helped you guys get that head start?
Well, the brand just celebrated 20 years this past August. So you go back 20 years ago, there wasn't anything but brick and mortar, right? No one was thinking about restaurants and CPG, and no one was thinking about virtual at that time. So that's why we've been able to constantly improve our systems, our training. And when we got the idea to launch the virtual, and this is back in November of 2019, we were already in airports, we were already in college campuses, we were already in sports stadiums, we were already in music venues. So we had a way to train people across the country, and we had distribution of the product. So we understood the operational side of it. And when we launched in January of 2020, we launched with 1 location. We didn't turn on our second location until March.
Oh, wow.
So we had 2 months of data, what was working, what wasn't working, what do we need to tinker with. Then it was like off to the races. And there were some people who just did it right, and we learned from those who were doing it wrong. And we now created a whole new system of how we retrain, how we recertify. I don't think we've really gone on a plane for maybe 4 restaurants, literally 4 visits in the last 40 months. It's all been done virtually for us, and we've been able, WowBao, but we've been able to secure, to keep a level of quality that's been very important for us.
That's really incredible. And so are you using a lot of restaurant-specific tech tools to do that, or are you able to get off-the-shelf tech tools that would work in any industry to train people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we were using an online training tool called Showpad, which was never designed for this. We used it in-house for everything we were doing, and we just kept adding to it and adding to it. We just did a partnership with Skooks. We're in the process of developing the material right now, so we're hoping in about 6 weeks we're going to launch it out to everybody. Then, sort of what's available to you, Zoom.
Yeah.
We use Zoom for a lot of stuff. But it really comes down to what I've learned is you have to have the relationship with the operator. And you have to really open a dialogue. What's working for you? What's not? How can we help you? What are we seeing? What are we hearing? We just partnered with Marquee to help us with reviews. They're coming in. One of our partners wants to now launch us with Ovation so they can start getting feedback. So we have some really good partners who want to keep elevating the relationship as well as the response they're getting to get the most sales. And I think that's great that they have this stuff built in-house. We don't really have any relationship with integrators for the third party. Sorry, we have a great relationship with Chowly, because that's who we use for our 3 brick and mortar. But now we're with Olo and Ordermark and Otter, and we don't have relationships with any of them, but we're the middle person between the restaurant and the integrator, and the restaurant wants us to deal with the integrator, and the integrator wants to deal with the restaurant because they're the client. So, there's great technology out there. It's really about having the relationship with each of the entities to make sure you can get the most out of each of the technology pieces.
That makes sense. And when you talk with restaurants who are interested in carrying WowBao, how do you help them assess their readiness for a virtual brand? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the capability? How do you help them think about answering that question?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So when we launched this back in 2020, our menu was probably about 60% of the size it is now. And everything that was on the menu was steam. Easy, you can boil water, you can do it. And that question was, do you have a steamer? Do you have an open flame? Like, what are we working with? Then we started to expand the menu based on people who've been with us for a long time. They wanted more menu items because they thought it would bring in more customers. We wanted to get higher check averages. Now it got out of the steam factor, and we got into egg rolls, which are fried. So then not everyone is a fryer. We work with Red Mangoes, which is an ice cream store, right? There's no cooking equipment at all. So then we started developing turbo chef technology of what of our items could work in there. Then we partnered with another group who had a rationale. So now we had to test our food in a rationale oven to see what would work. So it's more about what equipment do you have, and either we've already know it can work, or let us go back to our drawing board and see if we can make it work for you. The important thing is the integrity of the product, right? We're not just trying to put food into any old equipment and serve it because we need our product, which is our brand. And this is the hardest thing about the virtual space. We are allowing someone else to impress and affect my brand. And there are other virtual brands out there who have allowed people to do it, and they've negatively impacted the brands. And that is a terrible thing to happen. That is, I mean, it's sort of like, can you imagine if Apple let somebody else go run an Apple store and just ruin it? Like, that would be a terrible thing. The stock market, what would happen? And we are entrusting people with our brand. So it is our responsibility to constantly get people to represent the brand correctly.
There's a lot of synergies to franchising in this space, of course, but I'm curious when it comes to the different types of models that are out there. We make a point in the second book to really emphasize there are different types of ghost kitchens, there are different types of virtual brand companies. Help us understand the differences that exist out there, because I think that's important to the last point you just made.
Yeah, what was interesting is, I'll get back to your question, but it made me think of something. Uber Eats came out, 6 months ago, and they were killing 5,000 virtual restaurants. What's interesting about that is one of the reasons why they killed it is they were saying it was bad reviews. Inside of our top 3 reviews that are negative, one of them is always canceled orders. And Uber made a big point: if your orders are canceled, you have a high cancellation rate, we're going to turn it off. Integration causes cancellation. When integration fails, when POS fails, all of this virtual space is based on technology platforms, DoorDash, Uber, Grubhub. If they fail, you get bad cancellation rates, and then Uber's turning you off. And they don't realize that there are things that cause that is out of the operator's hands.
Right.
So when you talk about the different spaces, about the virtual and the cloud and the kitchen and the host and the ghost and the dark, there's factors that are outside the realm of any operator to make it successful. Now, in the virtual space, to get back to your question now, people were creating their own Mexican restaurant and then creating a virtual brand, calling it something totally different, right? Serving the exact same menu.
Yep.
Okay. I look at it a little differently than how it's been portrayed. If I own a taco place, Jeff's Tacos, and now I'm going to launch Alexander's Tacos, and you order from Alexander's Tacos, is that really a negative? Like, did I pull one over on you? Shouldn't you do your homework? Like, if you're going to order food, don't you want to know where the food's coming from?
To be fair, I'm probably going to order from Alexander Tacos and Jeff's Tacos. It's just the name.
It's just the name is different, but the menu, if the pictures look great and the food looks great, and if the food's good, does it really make a difference? Like, I can't really wrap my head around why it's such a negative, because it's increasing revenue for the restaurant who's struggling. I mean, we're in Chicago, and of my 3 brick and mortars, 2 are in business districts. We're still at 40% capacity in the business district. 40% capacity. My rents did not drop 40%. So if I have to find a different way to create more revenue and somebody's going to buy it, I don't see the negative. Now, if I'm lying about stuff, if I'm trying to hide stuff, if I'm doing this negative connotation behind it, I get that side of it. When you right now can shop online for anything, you don't know if it's coming from a 4th grader is making bracelets at their house, or you're buying it from Tiffany's. I mean, right? You don't know the quality of what you're buying. It's up to you as the consumer, right? Buyer beware to a degree. And look, I'm not trying to say that it's okay to serve crap. I don't want your listeners to think that. That is not what I'm saying. But I don't see why it's bad for people to want to survive. You can go into Old Navy, right? Owned by Gap, or was owned by Gap. I don't know if it is anymore, right? Clothing store. And it used to be clothing. You go to the cash register now, it's all candy, right? It's iPod stuff, or not iPod, I guess iPhone stuff. It's like all this stuff that's not their main business. Why is that okay? Is it okay because you're in the building and you know you're buying this from that, as opposed to it's out the back door and you don't know? Like, it's, you're utilizing your space to be successful. And you're not utilizing your space to be successful to put money in your pocket. You're trying to make ends meet. You're trying to pay your rent and keep people employed, right? I mean, when you go into the ghost situation now, right? The cloud kitchens of the world, the Kitchen Uniteds, even though I know they're moving away from the space, right? Where they have multiple kitchens that you can rent. What's happening in that world is it seems like it's acceptable if you run multiple brands out of it, because you never had a storefront to begin with. I remember in 2017, we visited Cloud Kitchen in LA. We actually opened up in there, and there was a guy who had a 200 square foot pizza concept, and he had 32 tablets, and I couldn't name 32 delivery companies. He made 4 different doughs, but he used the same pepperoni, the same sausage. He had different sauce and different dough, and everything else was the same, and he ran 4 pizza concepts. And in 2017, no one cared. People cared because the press attached themselves to this. And I do think there's a responsibility to the consumer.
There must be something that's attributed also to the fact that because you have the supply chain, that's a factor. A national supply chain that can really make sure that you don't get to a situation where the bao buns run out. The different models of how virtual branded restaurant companies are out there today are different as well. Any comments around what is the right kind of model for restaurants to think about embracing this? If they're on board with the idea of utilizing surplus capacity, how do you find the right kind of company?
Well, you should partner with WowBao. No, but the answer is very simple. It has to be important. It's a business. It's a business, and it needs to be treated as a business. You need to care about the guest who's going to have food in an hour that's going to taste good and look good and be right. If you don't care, if you're just putting food into a packaging and hoping it makes it to the bag and that it's going to be good when it gets there, you shouldn't do it. Right?
It's very Yoda of you.
Well, it's not even Yoda.
Do or do not, there is no try.
Yes.
You are either in this or you are not in this.
Right. There is no try. Do or don't do. You did the quote better. But look, all I know is there's real money to be made. And there's real positive outcomes from that money that can be done to help your business and your community and your employees. Why you wouldn't take it seriously? Why you wouldn't explain to that manager who's on that shift or that cook who's working there? And I get it. They're shorthanded. The manager's also the host, and the kitchen's missing somebody, and the kitchen manager went home. I get it. And I would say to that, if you have 40 menu items, I guarantee you 8 of them don't sell. I guarantee it. So turn on 8 virtual only that will sell, and now it's not additional work for the cook. Or just make sure that cook cares about the food. Bonus them, right? Reward them. Get a good rating. High five across the kitchen. Like, it's a business. Like I said earlier, if it's important to the boss, it will work for everyone else.
I think the other thing that WowBao has done so differently, obviously the supply chain, the training, the consistency, partnering with the right people, very, very important. But the other thing that's, I think, very different about WowBao is that the food is differentiated. And one of the neatest things I think about virtual brands is that they enable the rapid rollout of new styles of food to much of America that maybe it would have taken 5 or 10 years for that style of food or those concepts to get to those places. To what extent do you view product differentiation, brand differentiation as part of the WowBao win?
There's 2 reasons why WowBao has been successful in the space. The first is we exist, right? Again, we just celebrated 20 years. You can Google us, Facebook us, social us. Like, we have a story and we exist. The second reason is because we have this food that most people cannot cook, right? We're not another burger concept, wing concept, pizza concept that everyone can just turn on tomorrow, another taco that everyone can turn on. We are a Chinese food that most people cannot cook Chinese food, where the vision is you need woks, you need heat, you need skill, you need certain ingredients. When you go into most major metropolitans and you open up an app, third-party delivery, and you go to pizza, you might do 6 or 7 thumb scrolls. Depending on the major metropolitan, you might have 1 or 2 Chinese food scrolls. You go outside of major metropolitan and you go to suburban, you might be on 4 or 5 pizza, but you might not even have a thumb scroll for Chinese food. So our competitive set is much smaller, which is absolutely helpful to win of what we're able to do.
Yeah, so on the third-party apps, part of the reason that you are so visible in those apps, and we call it above the fold, meaning you don't have to thumb scroll, there literally just aren't other choices to fill that screen up.
Yes, and I have to say, I hear my culinary people in the background saying there's a third reason why we've been so successful. It's because we have great food. So let me throw that out there. But yes,
that's a given. That's a given.
Thank you. If you open up your app and you look, we buy keywords, search words. Chinese food doesn't go to pizza, burger, or chicken. If I bought the word chicken, because we have teriyaki chicken, orange chicken, right, curry chicken, I'm going to be in there with all the fried chicken sandwiches and the grilled chicken salads, right? So I can't buy that word. But none of those people can buy the word Chinese, right? Or pot sticker, or dumpling, or, right? My words really go to only the people serving our type of cuisine, which, again, we're always above the fold.
I love that.
Vending machines, CPG, the importance of the supply chain seems to be critical with all of this. How does it work? How do you make it work for you guys?
We have great partners to make sure our supply chain's not an issue. We're constantly working on a relationship with Dot Foods. We're constantly working on a relationship with Cisco, US Foods, Gordon Food, PFG, and we partner with everybody. And I think what's important to realize is everything, whether you're in the food or hospitality industry, everything is based on relationships. And during the pandemic, we were already in distribution. That's very key to know that we were already in there, because a lot of businesses, the Cisco's, the Dot Foods, the US Foods, wouldn't take on new product, but we were in. But what happened was there were layoffs going on. So everybody was overworked and underpaid and tired or whatever. And we worked on building relationships with each of those partners. And then what happened was, as people started coming back on board, they wanted to work with us because they heard good things, because we were respectful. Then our co-packers that we work with have been great as we continue to build out new items, new products. We visit regularly to all of our people to make sure that the job's being done. And just like anyone else in the world, nobody likes to do the same thing every day. So if you're bringing new ideas and you have a question about how we can improve and what we can do, it keeps those people inspired. Right? Education and motivation is the key to everything. And if you take that thought, that mindset to your employees, you want to educate and motivate them. To your consumer, you want to educate and motivate. And then your partners, because they're not getting educated and motivated, they're just doing jobs behind the scenes. It builds a relationship as a whole, really in a community way.
Awesome. Well, one last question. WowBao was created inside Lettuce Entertainment Group. For people who don't know Lettuce Entertainment Group, it is just an absolutely amazing restaurant group in Chicago, mostly dine-in restaurants, mostly a little bit higher end, great experience. And WowBao is very different from the rest of the Lettuce Entertainment Group. And I would go so far as to say, historically, you could point at large companies and say they're not so good at innovating something as disruptive from within as WowBao as a virtual brand has been. Frankly, even WowBao at the very beginning as a brick and mortar fast casual was. What do you think made it possible inside such a large restaurant group to innovate something so different and so new?
So Lettuce likes to build big restaurants that do very big volume. And Rich Melman, our founder, our chairman of the board, he's not really interested in repeating a brand. He's like, okay, I did that. Let's go do this now. Oh, I tried that. Let me go do this now. And so I think that's very disruptive, right? Most people would say, oh, this thing's a home run. Let's go do a gazillion of them. He's like, nope, I did it. I want to get a new partner, a new chef, and try something different. The other thing that makes Lettuce so successful, I'm going to, PR people are going to call me, I don't know, it's 120 or 160 restaurants are inside the umbrella right now. Inside the company, there are about 72 partners. So what happens is the partners run the brands, right? Lettuce is an umbrella company that we all, are proud to be part of. We all have the same mindset. We all think the same, but you are responsible for your individual restaurant or your concept, right? And when you are responsible for that, you think like an owner, you think like an entrepreneur, you think outside the box because you want this to be successful. There's no one saying, okay, everyone tomorrow, $5 off on DoorDash. Like, that's not how we operate. Especially when you have many different cuisines, it doesn't work for that. So when you get involved with any of our concepts, it's an education in how to run a business. And you're allowed to try things, you're allowed to fail. The rule is you have to learn from the failure.
Yeah.
It's also how big is the failure, right? You're not going to be given a blank check to go, turn something on that's going to break anyone's bank account. But you're encouraged to have ideas. And when you're surrounded by very successful people, Rich Melman, our founder, Kevin Brown, our CEO, RJ Melman, our president, you have people that, as resources to say, I want to try this, I have this idea. And either they've been there, done that, or they have a network of people who they can reach out to help guide you. And that is what I really attribute Lettuce's success to. Relationship building, which is really what Lettuce has always been about.
Thank you for being here today. On behalf of myself and Meredith, we always appreciate your support and helping us with our book promotion, helping us be able to get the word of WowBao out there. But congratulations to you and the team for tremendous growth. And what's the target for next year? How many WowBaos are going to be out across North America?
Right now, we're going to end this year with about close to 5,000, maybe 6,000 grocery stores. So we're working with. My goal next year is to be 15,000 to 18,000 doors, freezer doors, and we want to see that grow. And we're talking right now to a bunch of hotel operations. We're talking to some very large amusement groups.
Yeah, I would love to see WowBao product at some amusement parks.
Yes, why don't you call some people from?
I love it.
Well, it's easy. It's portable.
Yeah.
Right? It can
Why
be.
wouldn't you take that and just walk through the amusement park?
You don't need to ask me that question. That is not a question I'm going to answer. Why wouldn't we? I think yes, we should. We get like Salim Basul over here on your podcast and ask him why we don't have WowBao.
There you go.
Or Walt Disney's, minions over here. Bring in the mouse. Talk to him.
Yeah.
We'll get straight onto it. But Geoff, thanks again on the show. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
The Digital Restaurant Podcast is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Watch us, rate us, and subscribe to The Digital Restaurant on YouTube, and follow along on all our social media digital restaurant channels. Thanks for listening.